screen now are a few sand paintings specifically made by Dene artists. The Dene or Navajo have been making these for countless generations and are often used as part of the healing ceremony. I have a question for you. What can we know about these sand paintings, these intricate works of art, just by looking at them? What can we know for sure without doubt? Now, personally, I don't know enough about Dene culture to say with any accuracy the meanings or the purpose of these particular pieces. But there is one thing I do know without a shadow of a doubt. Anybody want to take a shot?
Human made.
Somebody made them. Some group or an individual made these. I don't know. Check. It's on.
They have a spiritual life.
No, we don't even know that. All we know is somebody made them, right? That's all we can say for sure. We can be. These didn't happen, right? It didn't happen by random chance. That the wind didn't just blow all the sand together and create these intricate works of art. Not that that can't happen. Beauty can be formed, through random actions of, tectonic moving and all this other wonderful things. I've seen it. But this type of intricate art can only be done by an individual person. I don't even say necessarily a human person, but a person. So if we thought about it though, what are the chances of an image like this just simply happening, randomly forming, just from various colored sands, just blowing around, and then some intricate pattern developing? What are the chances? Let's find out. Well, the second law of thermodynamics, often called the law of increased entropy, helps us understand what's going on here. Now, entropy is a gauge of randomness or chaos in a closed system. It's specifically about heat energy, but serves as a model of why the chaos of the colored sand increases when we have it. If we just put it out there, let's say if I took a box and I just put in 4 different colored sands and started shaking it, and I shook it more and I shook it more, and eventually all those 4 colored sands, what's going to happen with all that shaking is they're just going to all just blend into this until there's nothing. There's going to be more increased entropy, increased chaos without anything else happening, just nothing, until it can't be any more chaotic. And it won't get any more chaotic, and it won't get into order. That's how the law of second law of thermodynamics works. You just can't get any more specific than that. So no sand painting is going to randomly emerge. The law states that the total entropy or chaos in the isolated system can never decrease over time. It can't get more ordered. Thus, in all spontaneous processes, the total chaos always increases, and the process is irreversible. The increase in entropy counts for the irreversibility of natural processes and the asymmetry between future and past. So when you make a smoothie, you cannot unmake that smoothie. You just can't. You can't bring those, they might let it sit and separate into different layers, but you can't bring it back to its original ingredients. You can't go backwards. So, without conscious effort, there is no chance of a chaotic mess of colored sand will ever randomly turn into a complex picture, period. It can't happen. And this is why, it turns out, many people believe that our universe was created by some supernatural being of unknown origin. Is it any wonder when we look at the incredible universe, the complexity of this world and of life and living? Is it any wonder that people would assume some sort of creative force behind it? says otherwise, right? No. Science can't say anything. Science is a process. Some scientists may say otherwise, but science is silent. It's just a process of learning. So some scientists would say, yes, it's just a random thing. But science can't say anything to that. Now, consider a DNA molecule. Incredibly more complex than even the most elaborate sand painting. It's behind all the diversity of life on this planet. And are we to believe that these 4 nucleotides that constitute DNA randomly came together to form 20 different amino acids that are the building blocks of all living cells? That's what some people say. It's just a random act that these things happen to come together, circumstances were just right, and boom, life emerges. That means, what's the likelihood of the first DNA molecule that was created by natural forces, unguided by conscious intent, totally by chance, under ideal conditions, with all subsequent DNA molecules being copies and variations of that original molecule? What are the chances? The more I think, the more confused I get. Some have argued that the Earth just isn't old enough to account for the chance development of DNA, suggesting that DNA may have extraterrestrial origin. So some people have actually done the math and said, in order for this to happen, we would need this many trillions of years. And so the Earth is just old enough, so it must have come from somewhere else. This hypothesis is called panspermia, and it states specifically that microscopic life forms that can survive the effects of space, such as extremophiles, become trapped in debris, ejected into space after collisions between planets and small solar systems. And they harbor life, and they come here, or other planets. And now, it's not without chance. We have, we have evidence that this little creature, a tardigrade, can survive the extremes of space. So that part we know, that this is possible. But it only, in a sense, pushes the chance development of DNA back a step. It allows for more time for it to happen by chance. But it adds a whole other degree of difficulty into the mix. I mean, space is immense, beyond imagination, big. And we are to believe that a random piece of rock that happened to contain some random strand of DNA happened to survive the atmospheric, the burning of the atmosphere, and survive in force, and this adds so many levels of chance. And that brought forth all life on this planet. I suppose anything's possible. Now, I'm not saying that it isn't possible. I'm not saying it's impossible completely. But does it follow the rule of Occam's razor? Is this the simplest possible answer? It surely isn't testable, so ultimately not too helpful. Well, it might be testable once we leave this, leave our solar system, find life on other planets, and find if maybe there's connections. But right now, there is no testable way to prove any of this. And then there's the problem of chance itself. The problem of relying on chance events to explain the existence of life is that chance occurrences follow predictable patterns. It's always going to be a bell curve of some sort. This is just the sum of 2 dice. Very simple act, the more complex, but it's still going to follow a bell curve. So every chance occurrence is, the meaning of chance is that it's independent of what preceded it. That's what I learned in college genetics. That everything, that's why, you have 5 girls in a row, and you say, well, the chances are to have a boy next. No, every chance is 50-50, or roughly 50-50. It's it's not, there's no memory that's saying, oh, well, the other 5, okay, so, no, that's not how it works. But nothing is independent completely of anything else. Thus, for DNA to happen by mere chance, then the odds suggest that it had to almost form any number of times before that perfect DNA molecule was formed. It's kind of like the infinite number of chimpanzees sitting at an infinite number of typewriters with the hope that one of them writing a perfect replica of a Shakespearean play. Thus, there would, in order for that to happen, there would have to be any number of versions that are 99.99999% perfect. There's one typo there. Throw that one out. They got a word wrong. That one's out. So there'd have to be any number, countless versions that are almost there before you get that perfect one. And even more that are 98% and 97% and so on. There is no positive evidence that chance alone is sufficient to explain the development of complex molecules, let alone living cells. And the creationists will argue that the only way to solve this problem is with the creator God feeding energy into the system, an artist, so to speak, overriding the second law of thermodynamics. Like the artist depicting, providing mechanical energy and creative energy to produce a sand painting. And really, doesn't this kick that can even further down the road? In that if the world is so complex that it requires a creator, then doesn't imply that the creator also requires a creator? I'm wondering then if perhaps there isn't some middle road here. One between the purely random development of DNA and of life, and somewhere in the other extreme that this was all created by some supernatural being that happens to live in the sky, and not just any random supernatural being, but my supernatural being. Which happens to be random because I just happen to be born into a particular family, in a particular culture, and so it's my God, and my God is the creator God, not yours. That's all random too. Is there a middle ground here? Well, here are a few things that I can say that are true, I can be reasonably confident are true about this world. One is interdependence. Events in our world are never completely independent due to the interplay of countless energy fields, including gravitational fields, electromagnetic fields, quantum fields, you name it. Any number of fields, consciousness fields. Everything affects everything else. We aren't necessarily clear on all the ways things are interrelated, but we can be assured that they are. That's the first thing I know. The second is the power of now. The past is prelude. The future is nothing more than an assumption that I'm pretty confident of. And then the third, that reality is completely paradoxical. When we are confronted with an apparent either-or situation, if we are willing to step back from our own perspective, we often find that the dichotomy is artificial. Which means, of course, and quite paradoxically, that my first 2 points are only half-truths. But because the human tendency toward either-or thinking means we tend to emphasize our individuality over interdependence, because we tend to get lost in the past or the future realities of our imagination, because these tendencies tend to create suffering, experience teaches us to seek balance in the opposite, to emphasize interdependence and the power of now. I say all this just to say that if we have a personal God of creation on one hand and an impersonal atheistic universe on the other hand, because of the paradoxical nature of reality, the truth is found in the tension between them. That they're both true and they're both wrong if we only have one or the other. This is the truth behind this explanation of the Tao in the classic treatise known as the Tao Te Ching. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the origin of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of myriad things. Tao is both eternal and not eternal. How can that be? That's paradox. Now the name, the Tao Te Ching, actually means the way of change. But it just as easily could be called the Book of Paradoxes. It's literally filled with them. When you read the Tao Te Ching, it's just paradox after paradox after paradox. Now, based on what I've learned from the mystical traditions, I believe that there is a guiding, ordering, directing force in the universe, or G.O.D. for short. Guiding, ordering, directing force. And it falls into the same category as gravity, consciousness. Its effects are observable and measurable, but its full nature is beyond our understanding. It guides, it orders, it directs, but it does not dictate or judge. It is both personal, in that we can connect to it, and we find it in the personal, and it is impersonal. It doesn't love you more than it loves you. It doesn't hold anybody above anybody else, or even any person above other beings. I used to have arguments in seminary over this topic. God doesn't favor humans over other beings. When we are in alignment with it, we find peace. When we work against it, we create a living hell. And if you don't like the word G.O.D, fine. I know it comes with baggage. Pick another one. Just as the understanding aligns with Tao from Taoism and the poetry of Rumi, my beloved, I hear its echo in the beauty way of the Dene. Beauty is before me and beauty behind me. Above me and below me hovers the beautiful. I am surrounded by it. I am immersed in it. In my youth, I am aware of it, and in old age, I shall walk quietly the beautiful trail. In beauty, it is begun. In beauty, it is ended. The beautiful. That is G.O.D. And like beauty, an experience of divinity is in the eye of the beholder. It's not a matter of real or not real. That dichotomy is artificial. It's a matter of experience. Do you experience beauty here or there? Do you experience divinity here or there? This is the point missed by extremists on both sides of the argument. God is an experience that can only be felt and tested in the laboratory of the heart and the mind. And all arguments of real or not real miss the point completely. How does one argue the beauty of a sunset or a concerto? Any piece of art. Our name, Unitarian Universalism. The one and the all is symbolic of the paradox. Our principles, most notably the first and the seventh, the importance of the individual within the matrix of the web of life, is another expression of this paradox we find ourselves. I feel it is time for a more mature stance on this use of religiously charged words in our churches, in our communities. Because in the end, God, G.O.D, it's just a word. It's a symbol. One that some of us find useful and some of us don't. But a word that has real power in our culture. And I think last time I was here I talked about the soul. When we cease using these powerful words, we are choosing to let others define them. And while some of us would like to wish these religiously charged words away, pretending by keeping them out of our own churches, we are serving some great mission to rid the world of superstitious belief. In reality, all we are doing is giving free rein to those who would use these powerful words for their own authoritarian purposes. Is there any wonder that religious people flock to the political right and consider the left elitist and out of touch? Because the religious right is willing to use this language. And the left is not. They're starting to, with the return of the Poor People's Campaign. But just as overtly religious language can be used to scare and manipulate, it can be used to give hope and empower and bring people together. Just as it did in the Civil Rights era. Just look through quotes of Martin Luther King Jr. filled with words of God. Quotes from the Bible. It was the same with the social gospel movement of the early 19th century, early 20th century. Get my century. Late 19th, early 20th. The social gospel music, which was behind unions and changes in welfare and just so many things, and it was the backbone. And Unitarians and Universalists were both such a big part of it. We weren't afraid of the language then. What are we afraid of now? Priests, pundits, and politicians have for eons crafted an image of divinity that serves their personal interests. And the mystics and the prophets have tried to create a balance. Read the book, the prophets in the Bible, and most of them are trying to create balance between the priestly class and the poor people. Prophets are powerful. They're advocates for the poor and for the common people. They were a balance between the priestly class who gave all their emphasis to the powerful and the rich. Who's speaking for the poor now? It's time to turn the tables. This giant ball that we're floating on is in our hands. Why would we not use one of our most powerful tools to help us? Why would we not use the symbols, the words, the traditions that have given hope, that have empowered so many political and social movements, and are still empowering around the world? Why would we give them up? Because we don't like how other people use them? Every time we give them up, every time we choose not to use these words, they win. Because they are using the words. And we're letting them define them. Bring many names. I'm going to sing Mother Spirit, Father Spirit. God has so many images. Let's not be afraid to use them in our in our quest for beloved community. So be it. Amen. Blessed.